So I've been riding around this Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. This is a privately owned bike, lots of accessories fitted to it, and more importantly, a full S&S exhaust system with a DNA air filter. It's super responsive, much more than I recall the standard bike. So I figured, why not make a phone call, take them to a dyno, get a standard bike, and compare the pair. Let's go! The standard bike, Royal Enfield claims 47 horsepower or 35 kilowatts and 52 Newton meters. Now that's at the crank. You usually get a bit of loss when it's at the wheel. So on the dyno, the standard bike produces 43 horsepower at 7,000 RPM and a very impressive 51.5 Newton meters at 4,900. But interestingly, the graphs, particularly torque, are just nice and flat, really nice. So really good real world stuff, very flexible, very cool. Now for the modified bike. Now this has S&S pipes and a DNA air filter, so it should be interesting to see what happens. Oh. Okay, so the stock bike on the dyno was pumped out 43 horsepower at 51.5 Newton meters at 4,900 RPM. Now, the aftermarket bike with the full S&S exhaust system and a DNA air filter has produced 43 horsepower, same, and 55 Newton meters. So that's a bit of an improvement at about the same RPM. But the important thing is how they do it. Don't worry about the peak numbers, it's the big overall gains. So if you can see, the red line is the original and the blue line is the improvement of this bike, and that's where you got the real gains. Nice fat wedge of improvement. Yes. Well, turns out my pants are pretty accurate. It was about a 10% increase, so I reckon that's pretty damn good. Yes, the final peak power outputs haven't really changed, but as I said earlier, just the flexibility throughout the rev range between the 3 and the 5,500 RPM, massive difference there, very noticeable, far more responsive, confirmed on the dyno, well worth it.